Feeling overwhelmed? Well, here's how Moses handled when he was overwhelmed. If you're interested, keep watching. Welcome back to Thriving Thursdays. This is where I teach you biblical principles on how to be successful in your personal and your professional life. And so you may be wondering, who am I to be able to come on and teach you these principles? Well, I'm LaShawna Alfred. I am the CEO of You Change Counseling and Behavioral Health Organization. And let me tell you, when I first started my organization, I went from zero to being overbooked and having a waiting list of individuals wanting to come into my office. And so again, I made it this far using biblical principles, not having a business plan, simply having the relationship that I have with God, my faith, and really being able to look at scriptures to help me go from zero to multiple six figures. And so if you're interested, I want you to keep watching. So today, I'm talking to you going from the principles of Moses, right? We're looking at Moses and how did Moses overcome feeling overwhelmed. So the first principle is to delegate and seek support. Delegate and seek support. So maybe you are one who have been trying to be the master of all things, right? Trying to hold on and take care of family, relationships and business. And now you find yourself feeling overwhelmed and frustrated. And a lot of times that comes because we fail to communicate our needs. And we also take on more than we really have to. And so when we're looking at the first principle, delegate and seek support, I want you to ask yourself a couple questions. Have you been letting those that's in your household, those that may be working for you, have you been communicating with them what you really need? Have you been able to delegate chores at your home? Maybe your spouse can cook dinner. Whatever it is, I want you to really sit back and see, what are you not saying that is actually causing you to feel more overwhelmed than you really have to? Are you taking on a bunch of tasks at your office, in your business, because you don't trust people? These are questions I really want you to ask yourself to see. Why am I overwhelmed? Is it because I don't trust people, I'm not communicating my needs, and I'm failing to delegate where I actually can? And so looking at the principle of Moses, it was interesting because Moses' stepfather, Jethro, had to tell Moses, listen, Moses, you cannot do this on your own. So look at this video as me telling you, you cannot do this on your own. Whatever it is that you have on your plate, really sit back and see who can do some of these things. So when we're looking at buying back our time, in order to buy back our time, we have to be able to delegate menial tasks to someone else that actually can do it. And so I want you to sit down and see what is on my plate, what is on my to-do list, and who can I delegate some of these tasks to. So principle number one, we want to delegate and seek support. And again, lessons from Moses. So when you're feeling overwhelmed, don't try to do everything and don't bottle up your feelings. You want to practice your communication, letting those around you know where you actually need help. Principle number two. So we're coming from Exodus chapter 16. And this is trust in God's provision. So when you read in Exodus chapter 16, you see the children of Israel being in the wilderness, and they're complaining about not having food to eat. And so here it is where Moses had to trust God for the provision. This is what made it easy for Moses to trust God, because Moses realized that it was God who sent him on the mission in the first place. The question I have for you is, do you believe that God has actually called you into the business that you're in? Do you believe that God has called you to do the thing that you have on your to-do list? So if you believe that God has actually called you to start that business, to write that book, if you believe that God has actually called you to it, when you find yourself being overwhelmed, frustrated, and feeling like the provision is not there, I encourage you to go back to God. This is what Moses did. Even when they were complaining, here Moses had taken them out of bondage, had freed them, because this is the assignment that God had called Moses to. And yet they complain nearly the whole way through. Maybe you have individuals that you're trying to lead and guide, whether in your household or in your business, and they seem to be complaining or not understanding what you're actually trying to do for the betterment of the family and the business. Don't allow yourself to get caught up in that. Don't allow the murmuring and the complaining of those around you to cause you to feel overwhelmed. So after you've delegated and after you found and sought support through coaching or maybe counseling, you want to make sure that you're trusting God's provision. And so how do we do that? Well, we do it through prayer. We do it through prayer, going back to God, reminding God of what he actually called us to do, reminding God that if he brought you to it, that he will bring you through it. And not just reminding God, but you have to encourage yourself and believe that God won't bring you to something that he can't bring you through. So principle number 2 is trusting God's provision. And principle number 3, stay in constant communication with God. And so this is coming from Exodus chapter 33, verses 12 through 17. So notice this. Moses frequently went up, got away from the people to seek more instructions from God. Maybe you feel like you're at a crossroad. You got from point A to point B, and now you need some directions to get the rest of the way. Make sure that you're not trying to go through this thing alone, that God gave you a vision. Maybe he told you to do something, start this business, but you want to make sure you're not just rigid. I remember when God told me to start You Change. I literally started You Change as a publishing company. That's where I self-published my books. And then I began to continue to seek God for the next move. And eventually it turned into a behavioral health organization. And just because I'm here doesn't mean I stop seeking God's provision, that I stop going to God in prayer, asking for that next move. And so wherever you are, make sure you don't try to take the thing in your own hand and try to figure it out yourself. Remember, if God gave you the vision, he will give you the provision. Remember, God will not bring you to something he can't bring you through. And when you're feeling overwhelmed, take it to God in prayer. Don't forget to delegate and seek support, because a lot of the times when we're feeling overwhelmed is due to some beliefs that we're telling ourselves. Maybe you're saying to yourself that you have no help, that the people around you won't understand. Well, if you're telling yourself that, let's do this thing called try it and see. Ask for help. Ask them. Let them know exactly what you need. Don't just assume that they don't care. So that's principle number 1. Delegating and seeking support. Principle number 2 is seeking God's provision, making sure that you're not allowing yourself to stare at that dead-end wall or that black wall without going to God, asking God for your next direction. Principle number 3 is making sure you're in constant communication with God and trusting that God will connect you with the right people. He will let you know. And listen to this. Because even as I look back over my journey, my entrepreneurial journey, my business journey, I've had individuals that came on, I lost money believing that individuals' hearts was pure. But at the end of the day, I still had to seek God and trust that God knew exactly where I was, what I needed, and he also knew the intentions and the motive of others. But that did not deter me from trusting God in this thing called delegation. And so, if you are feeling overwhelmed, Learn the lessons from Moses. Moses felt overwhelmed. He sought support. He listened by delegating. He continued to seek God for provision. And he stayed in constant communication with God. Because remember this, if God called you to it, he'll bring you through it. Thank you for tuning in to Thriving Thursdays. I am LaShawna Alfred. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next week.